I want to start this video by saying that I love the Batman. He's one of my favorite comic characters with an amazing mythos, an interesting motif with fear, and obviously, he's cool as hell. Batman maybe has one of the coolest and rogues galleries in all of comics. Off the top of my head, only Spider-Man's gallery villains can compete with him, and The Flash trailing behind the two of them. Not to mention Dick Grayson or Nightwing is one of my favorite DC characters, especially with his relationship with the Teen Titans and Batman himself. So Batman fans, don't worry, I'm on your side. But even though I love Batman, I have a bunch of criticisms of him, most of which have to do with the nature of Batman as a rogue vigilante force. And most of these criticisms don't only extend to Bruce Wayne, but they extend to characters like Punisher or even Daredevil. The whole reason why I wanted to make this video is because I've been binging the Arkham games pretty hard. And those games, as fun as they are, kinda highlight my biggest problem with the Batman. He's brutal as hell. And don't worry, that's not all I have to say about him, but I want to start with the basics first. Obviously, most of us, or at least a lot of us, have seen the memes of Batman hospitalizing goons and henchmen, but for a brief moment, I want to actually talk about it seriously. Let's pretend that the Batman isn't a comic character. Let's pretend that he's real, and Gotham is real too, with all of its villains and maniacs and problems. In this scenario, you're a Gotham citizen who's watching the news. The Batman is in a high-speed chase through Gotham City with his multi-million-dollar car tank, zooming through the streets and cutting corners without a care in the world. You know nothing about the Batman other than the fact that he's a known vigilante who routinely gets into public battles with supervillains. Supervillains which regularly hold civilian hostages or destroy public property just to get back at the Batman. And what's worse, no one is holding him accountable. Even the police commissioner seems to be working with this rogue vigilante.
I gotta get me one of those.
But let's take this lack of accountability further. Change the scenario. You're a hired goon moving shipments for Two-Face. All of a sudden, Batman drops in and beats up you and your co-workers, giving you a concussion and a few broken ribs. But it's not over yet. The Batman grabs you and slams you to the ground. He stomps on your face and demands you tell him where Two-Face is. Not wanting to squeal because of what Two-Face might do to you, you tell him you don't know anything. So, naturally, the Batman drags you over to the street and calls up his Batmobile, pushing the massive tire against your head to torture the information out of you. You don't have a choice. Now, let me compare these scenarios to the real world by comparing Batman to a police officer. A police officer, someone who's supposedly meant to uphold justice, cannot torture someone for evidence, even though police officers have done this before. Additionally, if a police officer were to destroy public property, act with brutality, or otherwise abuse their power, they should be held accountable for their actions, even though police officers have done this before without getting into much trouble. And this is where I'm forced to see the reality of the Batman. In the real world, we're forced to realize that the Batman acts with impunity and extreme violence to achieve his means. Although we as the audience know that Bruce Wayne is a man with moral values who wants to protect the city of Gotham, we're forced to face the fact that his actions are unbecoming of someone who wants to uphold the law and protect people. This is the immorality of characters like the Batman. In real life, we've seen time and time again how supposed upholders of justice abuse their power and face no repercussions as a result of their actions. The Batman is a representation of that. In reality, Batman is basically a cop. But because he's dressed like a superhero and doesn't kill people, we don't view him with the same responsibilities. To prove my point even further, I'm going to bring up the Punisher and how Blue Lives Matter co-opted his symbol. For those unaware, Blue Lives Matter is an organization made by police in order to combat the Black Lives Matter movement, asking for police to be held accountable and made more effective. On the other hand, Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, is a violent anti-hero who kills anybody who breaks the law. He traditionally goes after genuinely horrible people and takes their lives to achieve what he posits to be justice. However, in some adaptations, Frank is revealed to not even really care about justice all that much. He's just angry and wants an excuse to kill people. The Punisher is inherently against due process in the judicial system, which makes it even weirder that a bunch of police co-opted his emblem. The Punisher is what Blue Lives Matter police want to be. Vigilantes who act with impunity to deliver what they deem to be justice, which is frighteningly similar to the Batman. My point in saying all of this is that I don't think the Batman, when brought into a real-life analysis of his ethics, can be considered moral. Crime fighters and do-gooders need to be held accountable. They're human and they're capable of making mistakes. Whether you're a superhero or a cop, justice still needs to apply to you. The Batman is dangerous. And I think that stories that don't analyze how characters like this might be immoral if their actions go unchecked are dangerous as well, especially if they're co-opted by outside groups. But this leaves the question, what can Bruce Wayne do? Obviously, Gotham needs protection, and if Bruce isn't willing to put himself under scrutiny as the Batman, he'll need to find another way. Well, the trillionaire can put his money towards fixing Gotham. Now, before you go to the comments, let me point out that I know Bruce Wayne donates to Gotham with the Wayne Foundation. I know he puts millions into fixing Gotham, but he's clearly not doing it effectively. Not to mention the fact that he's pouring his resources into Batmaning rather than fixing Gotham infrastructure. Trick Theory has a video calculating Bruce Wayne's net worth. The number he got was $306,700,400,000. Let me remind you, this isn't even counting the Watchtower, the Hall of Justice, Mount Justice, or the million other bases around the globe, or on the moon, which are entirely funded by Bruce. Obviously, the League still probably needs their bases, so we can't count that as resources that can be put back into Gotham, but the rest of it can easily be put into fixing roads, lights, and other parts of Gotham just to make the city feel nicer, which might lead to other people reinvesting into the city. Next, Bruce can fund local businesses to help create jobs while also trying to expand Wayne Industries to add more jobs there as well. Wayne could also run for mayor, which would allow him control over the city. He probably has a decent amount of public backing, especially if he put money into fixing Gotham before his candidacy, so I'd consider it very likely that he might win. This would probably help him fix GCPD's known corruption issues, especially if he works closely with Gordon and uses his detective skills to find evidence. And lastly is the biggest issue. Fixing Arkham Asylum. Jesus Christ, I feel like he doesn't even try. Fixing Arkham might be the most important thing on the list. It's essentially known to be a revolving door of criminals, has a really old building with terrible security, and psychiatrists that either don't do anything, actively make it worse, or are as insane as the prisoners. Fixing Arkham, or maybe even trying to open a newer facility that's more equipped to hold and help these super criminals is definitely top priority. Let's maybe use your brain instead of just wearing it, Bruce. All that being said, I get why Bruce can never actually fix Gotham or stop being Batman. They gotta write stories and they gotta make money. And I'm glad, I love Batman stories. But I think it's a fun exercise to take characters outside of their context and analyze them more critically. Especially if there's something to learn. And before anyone comes for me, I know Gotham is technically cursed so it will never get better. But I think that's a boring cop-out, so I just ignored it. And technically, everything's canon right now, so I'm right, you're wrong, end of discussion. Also, there's the obvious issue of Superman not swooping in from across the river and handling all of Gotham's villains in a flash, but that's boring, so I didn't want to talk about that. It would also beg the question of if Superman could even do anything to some of Batman's villains who tend to be more psychologically or intellectually threatening than physically threatening, but that's a story for another video. I'm getting distracted. Point is, I like Batman. But Batman, when analyzed realistically, isn't very ethical, which is why I prefer him when he's used as a symbol for hope and a guy trying to do the right thing when the world is doing wrong. Not some edgy, violent megalomaniac who likes beating people into the ground. Let me know what you think of this video or Batman as a whole. If I missed anything, feel free to let me know in the comments, and like the video or something. Subscribe to see my next video where I break down the ethics of Condiment King wasting so much food for violent crimes.